All right, so first of all, we notice the question is asking for degrees. This one is a non-calculator question, so you don't have to change your calculator to degrees because we won't be using it. So we notice we have a cos squared. I'm going to make a mistake in here, and you're going to see if you can find my mistake. Just to, you don't have to, well, you can write it down because the mistake will be something that we'll be able to fix that won't create too much problem. So I'm going to start with this. I want to solve for cos. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Get cos squared equals 1/2. And then I'm going to square root both sides. Now what am I going to do with that square root of 1 over 2? How do you have a fraction inside of a square root? Do you know that that's the same as the square root of 1 over the square root of 2? Yes or no? Right? And then, well, the square root of 1 is 1 over root 2. So at this point, I've simplified it a little bit. Do you recognize that value? Is that on our pie plate? How? Where does it appear on our pie plate? Pi over 4. Does it help if instead of having it like this, is it more helpful if we rationalize the denominator and had it look like this? Is that more recognizable for you? So you have to be careful because sometimes something on your pie plate may appear, but you might not recognize it right away because it's 1 over root 2 or 1 over root 3 instead of root 2 over 2. So now that we've got it as part of our pie plate, where is cos equal to root 2 over 2? What family? Pi over 4 in quadrants 1 and quadrant 4. Quadrants 1 and quadrant 4. All right. So now I've solved it between 0 and 360. I've actually made 2 little mistakes. I know. Can you find them? I made 2 mistakes. Good. There's the first mistake. When you square root both sides, what do you have to remember? Plus or minus. So that'll change all this to plus or minus all the way through. You see how that didn't really affect your notes? The next mistake affects your notes just a tiny bit. I did it in radians, and I'm supposed to do it in degrees. So one of the things that you sort of get into the habit is you get into the habit of solving between 0 and 2 pi. But when you're done a question, you should always go back and have a look. What was the domain actually? And the domain was in degrees from 0 to 360. So now I have to go down here. These answers weren't wrong, but they're in radians. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to say, well, now I know it's plus or minus root 2. It's my pi over 4 or 45 degree family. It's going to be in all 4 quadrants because it's positive and negative. So when we write our answers for x, 45 degrees, 135 degrees, 225 degrees, and 315 degrees. For your questions that you can do, I'd like you to do 5 and 11. And for number 5, I want you to just change the instructions a little bit. I want you to change the instructions to be to actually solve it from 0 to 2 pi. So instead of the instructions that are there, change it to whatever question is, solve it from 0 to 2 pi.